A group of exceptional humans brought together by their uncanny superpowers, paranormal investigators protecting the innocent, fighting for justice, saving the world. Extraordinary people facing incredible odds, relying on themselves as a team, risking their lives for a world that can't understand them, a world that fears them. Is this the X-Men? Are they the Avengers? Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Misfits of Science. Misfits of Science is a 16-episode live-action television series originally broadcast on NBC in the United States from October of 1985 to May of 1986. Also called, Superminds in France, Die Spezialisten Unterwegs in Germany, Curto Circuito in Brazil, and Los Científicos Rebeldes throughout Mexico and several other countries. Dr. Billy Hayes is part of the Human Investigation Team at Humanityne Institute. His facility is a safe haven for unusual people from around the world. People with abilities or powers that some can and many cannot control. In this world, a lot of what we think of as supernatural is real. And for this team, routine to the point of mundanity. The Human Investigation Team is a defense of those people from the world that would exploit them. In Billy's own words, quote, protecting weird people from the warmongers, end quote. Their parent organization, Humanityne, on the other hand, is the largest defense contractor in the United States. And recently, a new department head was put in place that changes the team's focus from humanitarian research to commercial interest. The new boss wants the Human Investigation Team to start producing results that can be sold to the military or vacate the premises. Humanityne's big project is the neutron laser, a weapon so powerful it could potentially destroy an entire building, an entire island, an entire country, and, in every computer simulation they've run so far, the entire planet. They still have some bugs to work out. But it gets worse. The beloved old boss of Humanityne accidentally finds out that the new boss already built the neutron laser in cooperation with the military. The old boss is taken into custody by the new boss to be used in experiments to keep him quiet. Along with a new patient, a man who can freeze anything he touches. And on top of that, the new head of Humanityne terminates the entire Human Investigation Team's budget. With nothing left to lose, Billy recruits a team of superpowered weirdos for a jailbreak/heist to free their friends and expose the neutron laser's existence to the world. The Misfits of Science, so named thanks to the t-shirts Billy had made up for a rec league basketball team that he was never able to assemble, include Billy's friend Dr. Elvin Lincoln, L for short, pun intended. Elvin is a very tall man and a very talented scientist. At 7'4", much to Billy's dismay, El's dream was not to play basketball, but to just be normal. Elvin conducted glandular research to develop a formula to make himself smaller, and it worked. Too well, in fact. Now, when he applies pressure to the back of his head, it activates a neurological reflex that causes him to shrink down to 11 inches for around 14 minutes, no more than once an hour. Much smaller than his target height of like 6'1". Johnny Bukowski, or Johnny B, is a former musician and certified 80s cool dude who was electrocuted during his last performance. As a result, he's become a living battery, absorbing electricity from everything around him, including static in the air. He can store a charge and fire it off in lightning bolts from his hands or briefly run as fast as the Flash. Unfortunately, water burns his skin, so the dry isolation of the desert has become home for his own safety and the people around him. Gloria is a teenager with sight-based telekinetic powers. As long as she can see something, she can move it with her mind. She's a juvenile delinquent, having been in trouble more than once for using her powers in an undisciplined manner. She's also dealing with the fact that her mother was committed to a mental health institution for insisting that Gloria's father is from outer space. The only thing keeping Gloria in check is her probation officer/friend, Jane Miller. The team's transportation of choice, their Batmobile if you will, is an ice cream truck with a freezer large enough to carry Arnold Beef Beefneater after the jailbreak. Beef is the man who was cryogenically frozen in 1937 and now, today, can freeze anything he touches. But if his temperature ever reaches 32 degrees Fahrenheit, he will die. The last member of the team is Dr. Billy Hayes, of course. Like Jane, Billy has no superpowers other than his quick wit and his genuine compassion for the extraordinary people he meets through his scientific endeavors, despite his emphasis on labeling people as either weird or normal. He does have a pretty good jump shot, and it does come in handy, but it's not more important than his maturation into a true selfless leader, finding his purpose through the extraordinary circumstances that brought him to this moment, to leading this band of outcasts to a greater good.
That's me, Dr. Billy Hayes, and I'm looking for a few good heroes who know how to have a good time.
Excuse me, would you happen to be seeking representation?
Like my friend Elvin. Now, he's a brilliant scientist, but boy, can he get down. From 7 feet to 7 inches, and he can go where no man has gone before. Then there's Beast. Now, he doesn't make a very good first impression, but this dude is so cool that he can freeze everything he touches. Now, Gloria is really just a sweet kid, but she can do anything she puts her mind to. She's got powers that'll make your head spin. And then there's Johnny B. Now, he used to be a rock and roll star, but now he attracts electricity. Oh, he's got more juice in him than O.J. Simpson. And when he cuts loose, he'll just blow you away.
Together, these Misfits of Science will make an unbeatable team. And with Billy at the wheel, they're out to save the world and have a blast. The Misfits of Science, Fridays this fall.
Misfits of Science was created by James D. Perriott, who would go on to produce shows like Grey's Anatomy, Ugly Betty, and Sons of Anarchy. Prior to Misfits, he had worked on The Bionic Woman, The Incredible Hulk, and Voyagers, so he had a pedigree for sci-fi superhero-type shows. But that concerned him. He didn't want to be that guy who can only do that kind of show. When head of NBC, Brandon Tartikoff, came to him wanting to do this show about a team of people with extraordinary abilities, he initially balked. Look, when the head of NBC comes to you and asks you to do a show, even if you have reservations, you say yes. And that's what James did. Just go for it. A little bit tongue-in-cheek. Even if it flops, they can still say they gave it a shot and had fun with it. The name Misfits of Science and the bigger picture stuff were proposed by Tartikoff. He suggested they could pull crazy ideas from places like the National Enquirer. Tonally, it could echo Ghostbusters, which was a hit in theaters the year before. Fun, wacky, superhero-y, science fiction type Friday night fun. That's how it's pronounced. Tartikoff was young and successful. He started at ABC in 1976. A year later, he was at NBC handling comedy programming. By 1981, he was in charge of all programming at NBC. All of this by age 32. NBC had been lagging behind ABC and CBS. Things were getting dire. If NBC didn't start making some changes, gaining some ground, there might not be a network. Johnny Carson was considering leaving. Saturday Night Live was tanking. Syndicated shows were looking for a home anywhere else. While intimidating, it was also a freeing time, allowing Tartikoff to take risks that wouldn't have been possible if things were stable. They had nothing left to lose. Shows that began under Tartikoff include The Cosby Show, Seinfeld, Cheers, Golden Girls, Family Ties, Miami Vice, and Knight Rider, of which Tartikoff said was inspired by an absence of leading men with acting ability. He thought a talking car could do just as well as those overly permed talking meat sacks. My description, not his. Tartikoff steered NBC back from the abyss, from 3 shows in the top 20 in 1981 to the #1 network in 1985. Part of Hollywood's success is borrowing a formula that already worked for someone else. Looking for something to put on Friday nights against CBS's unstoppable force, Dallas, Tartikoff took cues from 1984 box office hit Ghostbusters. Heck, half that cast came from NBC's Saturday Night Live in the first place. The Misfits of Science pilot episode opens with 2 blue-collar city workers exploring a spooky storage facility in the dark where they uncover a tomb-like cryogenic chamber. The whole thing is played exactly the way you'd expect it to play if it were intended to be part of the Ghostbusters universe. When that scene ends, the episode cuts to the theme music playing over an ambulance driving down the highway. It is the exact same kind of car that the Ghostbusters use as Ecto-1, explained by the fact that, like the Ghostbusters, the human investigation team is wildly underfunded and forced to use broken and out-of-date technology. Misfits of Science featured an interesting cast. Billy Hayes was played by Dean Paul Martin, the son of Dean Martin. Elvin Lincoln was played by Kevin Peter Hall, who appeared in the infamous 1982 made-for-TV movie Mazes and Monsters, and would go on to play the Predator in the Predator movies and Harry in the Harry and the Hendersons movie and TV series. Johnny B was played by Mark Thomas Miller, the 3rd actor in the series to go by 3 names. They shared a total of 7 first names amongst them. Gloria was played by Courtney Cox, who landed the role after her appearance in the 1984 video for Bruce Springsteen's Dancin' in the Dark. She has stayed busy since. Jane Miller was played by Jennifer Holmes, who had a prolific career prior to Misfits, but was pregnant early in the series. Her role was reduced as the shooting went along. Beef the Iceman was played by Mickey Jones, the second most successful member of the cast after Courtney Cox, and Alf's adopted dad from Earth, Max Wright, was Dick Stetmeyer, the director of Humanityne Institute during the regular series. Misfits of Science was the kind of show that, if produced today, would have easily supported a line of action figures, licensed apparel, games, posters. There would have been a far more comprehensive rollout for a show like this because there is far more established audience for a show like this. It's no spoiler to say that Misfits of Science was not a success. To be like Ghostbusters was not enough. Characters and plotlines were at times ridiculous, and the consequences weren't always considered. In the pilot episode, the team drives an ice cream truck because the character Beef has to stay frozen or he'll die. But in subsequent episodes, Beef just isn't there anymore, and they still drive the ice cream truck. I don't know. Misfits of Science lasted for an additional 14 episodes after the pilot. A 16th was made, but never aired. Like Manimal and other shows before them, they were victims of the dreaded opposite Dallas time slot on Friday nights. All things considered, though, maybe we should thank Dallas for shows like Manimal and Misfits of Science existing at all. You don't take a chance with an idea like Misfits of Science unless you're just throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. When you have nothing left to lose, you can take bigger risks. And that is the real story of this show in our world and within the narrative. And not for nothing, but how many TVs were in a single household at the time? One? Maybe two? That's a big part of why a show like this fails to find its audience. Not the lack of connection with the larger mainstream audience. That was never going to happen. It's the niche audience that would have loved it while the primary or solitary TV set in the house was otherwise in use. Misfits of Science lasted as long as it did thanks to Brandon Tartikoff. He liked it, even though the ratings weren't there, even though it wasn't the Misfits' fault. Everything NBC tried to put on Friday night against CBS died. The pilot episode for Misfits of Science was released on VHS back when dinosaurs roamed the Earth. The entire series was released on DVD in Germany as a 5-disc set in 2008 with both English and German soundtracks and subtitles. It includes the single final episode that never aired. In 2012, the series was released on DVD in France, but to this day, the series has not been released in the US and is currently not available on any streaming service, although you can find it here on YouTube unofficially. According to writer and story consultant Donald Todd, the problem with a DVD release in the US is the music. Misfits of Science featured a lot of popular music. The pilot episode alone would necessitate acquiring the rights to music from Thomas Dolby, Kim Wilde, Chuck Berry. Alright, maybe that's not that expensive, but how many copies of this thing are we gonna move? A Misfits of Science return with the original cast is impossible at this point. Dean Paul Martin was a captain in the California Air National Guard flying fighter jets. He was killed in a crash in 1987 during a snowstorm. Kevin Peter Hall was in a car accident in 1990 that caused injuries so severe he needed surgery. The blood transfusion he received was contaminated, and a year later he died of AIDS. Mark Thomas Miller was also in an accident that pulled him away from acting. He found a new life as a contractor building houses. Despite being on Silk Stockings in 1996, IMDb lists his last role as Glenn Beckman in a movie called The Enigma with a Stigma in 2006. Courtney Cox is, of course, Courtney Cox, and unlikely to be involved in any kind of reboot or reimagining of the concept. She's got Scream 5 coming up and would have to fall a bit further from stardom before landing at the Human Investigation Team again. Brandon Tartikoff himself died in 1997 at age 48. He had struggled with Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer throughout his life. It makes the things he accomplished all the more remarkable knowing how young he was when he passed. Misfits of Science was nominated for an Emmy in 1986 for Outstanding Sound Editing in a Series, but its legacy isn't about the accolades, real or imagined. It's about the message at the core of the show. On the surface, Misfits of Science is about superpowered adventuring and paranormal investigation, but underneath, it's also about change. Unexplained physical evolution, sure, but more importantly, learning to accept the differences between people. And not just accepting those differences, but understanding that the differences are what make us stronger. It's the differences that make us unique. And that includes Billy accepting himself and his own shortcomings, his own disappointments about who he is and what he does. In Billy's own words, being weird is special. Being weird is okay. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you haven't heard, we started a new second channel called Toy Galaxy 2. That's TOO. Head over there and subscribe for stuff we don't post here. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy or become a YouTube channel member. Please share this video and let us know in the comments down below if you'd have loved a Ghostbusters-style approach to the X-Men. That's basically what this show was. I absolutely loved it as a kid and was surprised at how well it holds up today for my own personal taste. The effects are very of the era, but it's charming to me now and they don't get in the way of the story and the characters from whom I wasn't looking for a lot of depth. Your mileage may vary.